absolutely delighted, friends, to have Dr. N. Prem here with us this evening. Okay. Uh, I'm so tempted to be informal because I've known him for a number of years. But then I think the occasion calls for us to be slightly formal, if I may say so. Okay. So let me do a very quick introduction to Prem. Dr. N. Prem is a leading geriatrician. He is currently the chief consultant in geriatric medicine and elderly care, specialist in the department in geriatric medicine at Jaslok Hospital, Mumbai. He founded the department at Jaslok in 2018. Founded. He is an MD, geriatric medicine from Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, Kochi, and has done a senior residency at the Department of Geriatric Medicine, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, where he continued as an assistant professor. He has 10 years of experience in the field of elder care. His areas of work include multi-morbidity, geriatric syndromes, dementia. I'm so concerned about it. I went and saw him once about that. Okay. Geriatric oncology, chronic care, end-of-life care. It's such an important thing for us to understand, and community geriatrics. He believes in comprehensive, holistic care for older adults. Once again, welcome, Prem. I'm absolutely and truly grateful for your time. So let us start with the questions, okay?
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
So first thing that I want to understand, I'm very curious about your focus on seniors. How did that happen? What led you to your interest in seniors?
As far as, of course, I would say that if you see, I mean, in general, maybe the fact that I was always sort of maybe respectable to older adults, that was one, but maybe I was always drawn to it. But to be very frank, when I joined into being a geriatrician, I myself did not know much about it. By that, I mean, I had a sensitivity to older adults. Maybe it comes through personal experiences. But more than anything, I think I really sort of warmed up to it, learned more about it. I think I mean, I have to really give it to my teachers in Amrita and Kochi, who actually sort of got me into tune. I was lucky that Kerala has always been a population which is older. So, I mean, the more amount of people who were there were older adults. So that experience, that training, I think ultimately you have that sort of, I always knew I was good to older adults, but then you need to be put, you can say, to good that adequate training and sort of sensitization to the particular subject of how you can help them. Because it's not that general notion that you only sort of, I mean, geriatrics is not about just talking and getting a way around older people. No, it's not. It's about actually identifying the problems. Yeah. And at the same time, addressing each one of them, because the problems are not always medical. So it's kind of, that's why I said I believe in something as a holistic sort of care. And more than anything, as I'm now here, I mean, I can retrospectively answer your question, is that it's basically I've only added to my experiences, because every older adult I see is actually a 60, 70, 80-year life experience. So I actually sort of maybe learn more and more from them. I a lot of times use my knowledge to actually superimpose to what their life experiences are. But at the same time, yes, we should not forget that health is very important. So, I mean, health is where I come in. And I think physical, mental, both, because I mean, the pandemic has made all us realize that the mental aspect of health was always as important. It's just that we didn't talk much about it because of unfortunate taboos, which were always there.
Yeah. In fact, that leads me to the next question very naturally. So what are the specific issues that seniors face in India today? I mean, let's talk about both pandemic, pre-pandemic anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are the key issues that seniors face?
I think you can say it's, as far as older adults are concerned, it's always this life course. So basically there are stages of life. We know that it's youth, then we know that, I mean, young youth, then middle age, and then we go on to older adults. So somehow, I mean, till 59 and 364 days, 59 and 364 days, we are all ready for retirement. I mean, 60 is just the age which has been sort of put upon us purely because it was a retirement age which was put earlier, but it's not necessarily. Abroad it's 65, and usually we have divided into certain things like young old, middle old, and old. So it's 60 to 69, 70 to 79, and 80 to 80. So as we go through, we should understand that there is an aging which is happening, and we have been aging since day one.
Yeah.
So we are bound to have certain issues which might be age related. Now we have to differentiate that from disease. For example, dementia. I think dementia is one of the very important things which is quite common pre and post pandemic both. In fact, the burden is only going to increase because a lot of people couldn't go out, so the mental sort of aspect obviously was affected. Then I think the metabolic diseases which have already been always a problem. I think the cardiovascular diseases like coronary artery disease, then even diabetes, then hypertension. I think depression is common but not talked about. You are not able to sort of, we just brand it in general that yes, maybe there's a bit of negativity because we are getting older. That's not the case. Depression is actually a diagnosis. Right. It needs to be addressed, and most importantly, it's treatable. Falls, I think the fact that you are independent and everything is okay. I mean, we have had so many patients in which the life course is so perfect, but one fall and everything changes.
Correct.
So falls are something which are always put into our mind that you should not treat them. You should prevent them, because treatment can be very sort of difficult. Then I think bone health, very neglected. Osteoporosis is very common. Unfortunately, always discovered maybe after an admission. After somebody has fallen, the bones are sort of broken, and then you realize, oh my God, they were so weak. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's a bit of the work ethics as well. For example, if you're in a cabin for a long time, you've not been having any exposure, but at the same time, you've not taken care of your health as such. Then there is obviously very commonly, I think infections are common, like pneumonia and even urinary tract infections. Urinary problems per se, like increased frequency of urination. A lot of people can lose control on their own urine. So that is known as urinary incontinence, which is common both males as well as females. Of course, in males, it's more of the prostate issues, which are usually sort of as you go older. Then if you see the age dynamic, then yes, as we are getting older, the amount of cancers are also increasing. The propensity has been seen that even cancers are very, very sort of common. But these specific things I mentioned, including dementia, depression, falls, urinary incontinence, then there is an entity known as frailty. For example, a frail older adult, if gets admitted, might actually not come back to the original level after admission and discharge as compared to a normal older adult who will be just maybe affected for that particular time, but after some time might come back to sort of normal health.
So are issues for seniors in big cities very different from for seniors in smaller cities? Is there a
I think a very pertinent question. So I was actually sort of going to get into that only. What has been seen is, I think sometimes it's also known as a lack of diagnosis. Maybe it's not been diagnosed in the rural areas, but in the senior, in the urban space, a lot of things. I mean, accidents are actually one of the most common causes of death, which is something which we never sort of realize throughout as well. But apart from that, diabetes is huge. Then even to an extent, metabolic diseases like cardiovascular diseases, then stroke. Then even dementia is really getting increased. If you see the rural space, I think somehow maybe the lack of, I won't say lack of stress. There is stress always for everybody in every setting, but I think the amount, maybe there is already that physical activity which has been done. For example, if you quote a farmer who's a 70-year-old farmer who's still active, maybe more in an organizational way rather than doing the hard yards which he or she used to do earlier, might have a lesser chance of being sedentary and having a metabolic disease like a cardiovascular disease. So I think the problems happen if something happens, then the healthcare is not available. So it's more of if something goes wrong. I mean, even rural population, there is a huge amount of, cardiovascular diseases as well. It's not that it's not, but sometimes it's not diagnosed. So by the time it gets diagnosed and they actually sort of look at further care, it might be sometimes late. So it's more worry if something wrong happens than who.
Okay.
as far as the structure of the family is concerned, I think just paused a bit. The structure of the family is concerned, I think they still can bank on to an extent the fact that there might be an extended family which might be taking care of the fields, or maybe a second generation, third generation. So their sort of social strata is there. Whereas because of urbanization, sometimes maybe people are in different cities. So that support system might not always be there, and it might be replaced by maybe a paid support system, which is also which is also very sort of common, and I think that should be there. So overall diseases are sort of not very different, but access to healthcare is only got better. In fact, after pandemic, the telemedicine has helped us get us more closer to the rural areas also.
Okay. So tell me, the other thing is there longevity increasing? With that, there are more issues cropping up. I mean, for instance, there used to be a time that if you are 60 and then you cross 60, that was big. But the number of guys who are touching 80 and 90 these days are quite high, I see. I mean, from my own relatives, many of them are, and when all my classmates today are in the age group of 70 to 73, right? And most of us are quite fit. So is this increasing different issues? Is there an issue coming up because of the longevity?
Yeah, I think in general, world over, yes, longevity is increasing. Even in India, as such, longevity is increasing. I mean, we might always call us maybe a young nation as such, but it's not that way anymore. There is a long, I mean, the health has only improved. So what is happening is, earlier it was, as you said, it was considered to be an effort to live to a certain amount of, so we didn't know what happens after that. But then what, the organ is 80 years older now, 90 years older. So the chances of getting risks are even more. Now, for example, earlier, if I have to give an example of HIV, HIV was supposed to be the death knell. If you get that, and you will not go up to a certain amount of age. But now what is happening is, with better medications, people are living with HIV and getting older. So as they grow older, things like frailty, things like constipation, things like side effects of the medications, with an aging body, which was not there earlier, because we were only thinking about till this particular age only, anyways people are living. So what is there to think about the side effects of medications later? So that is causing more of a problem. So the interaction between an aging body, the disease, and the drug is sort of causing more problems as compared to the disease only. So I think that is one of the major differences, and that is what we will face as healthcare professionals. There, in an aging body, people will live longer, but we will have more challenges in sort of actually taking care of them, because everything presents differently as compared to maybe a younger population.
So as an Indian society, or even as a country, are we sensitive to the elders' issues, or are we actually becoming more and more insensitive to these issues because we are chasing things? We want to compete with other nations. I want to make sure that my incomes are going up and people's education standard of living was going up. I mean, banana, everything is there, right? So how are we as a nation coping with this change?
No, I think we are, I mean, the biggest, I wouldn't say one of the biggest examples is, I mean, even although he might deny it, but even the person who's at the helm of India himself is actually above 65, but he still is very active. So I think he's sort of an epitome of the fact. Even if you remember APJ Abdul Kalam, sir, he was actually very active during after 65, 60, 75, till whatever age he. And I mean, ironically, he died while teaching, so on stage. So that is what he wanted to do.
Right.
So I won't say that we are insensitive. I think it was more of a lack of maybe understanding what's happening.
Okay.
It's not, I don't think all older adults need care from younger people. It is to understand which older adults need. If an older adult is independent, I want all empowerment to them. They should be able to take it, because they have an autonomy. So they will be obviously taking care of their particular decisions, whether it is even an end of life or whether it is about their disease. But the fact that who needs that extra help, that is the identification that needs maybe more sensitization. So this, I mean, most importantly, I think to answer it, the older adults are a heterogeneous population.
Okay.
So you cannot just generalize them saying that all older adults, for example, there are myths of aging, will have memory problems, all older adults will be depressed, learning is absolutely impossible after a certain age. I don't think so. These are all myths which have been just created. So we need to identify which older adult needs help, and that is how that sensitivity will sort of increase. So they have to understand there is a fit older adult also,
Correct.
but there is a life course.
Right.
That unfitness, I mean, that unfit part can happen, and that is where health is sort of a common thing in which health has to be, because you can be dependent or you can be independent depending upon how healthy you are.
So you can't paint everybody with the same brush. That's what you're saying.
You can't.
Every person, every elder is different. His or her issues are different. And the needs that they have in terms of support and care are different.
Yeah.
And the level of independence could also be different.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing. So which country in the world leads in care for seniors? What can we learn from them? Is it US or any of the European countries? Is it Japan, for instance? What can we learn from them?
I think there are multiple countries who are actually quite aging. I mean, Japan is has got one of the islands in which there are people, a large number of people who are above 100, who are above 90. But it's a generational thing. It's not that there is only one generation. So they have been doing something right. It has been diet, it has been their amount of physical activity that they have been doing. And more than anything, so since they have reached that centenarian sort of thing, so we have been able to analyze what they have done. So for example, if you don't have that population only, then how do you sort of analyze? Unfortunately, in most trials, older adults are left out. So then how do you get to know? It's not the case now. Now, obviously, more and more older adults are involved. Then, of course, as far as care is concerned, I think even China, to a great extent, had a lot of an aging population. Then United States of America and in general Europe, UK and US were always at the sort of helm in the fact that, for example, if you tell me that where we are now, maybe the US was maybe at around 20 to 30 years ago. So we are still doing a bit of sort of catching up as far as level of care is concerned. But everything, I mean, even Australia to a great extent and New Zealand. But I would say all of them have different challenges. Our biggest challenge is our population. And our population with all segments, the older adult population is also sort of increased a lot. It's not earlier, it was like infant mortality rate high, so young population not there. Middle population going on, but they are not living up to old. So it was only about taking care of the middle population or maybe the young. But now it's not the case. We need to be more and more sort of ready for, I think, the older adult population. So if you have to learn, I think it's the level of care. That, as I said earlier, every older adult is different. So somebody, you might have to take care of them in the hospital. Sometime you might have to take care of them at home, or even assisted living, or even elder care communities. I mean, this myth that elder care communities is something where older adults go to, where their children actually say you go. No, that's absolutely not. If older adults are independent, they are deciding that I don't want to be at home, my home. I want to be in an elder care community where we have severe set of people and I can continue to enjoy with them because there are activities in those communities. So all those things have come. So, but I would say every country has its model. So for example, if you have to make something for India, it has to be quite different as compared to what is happening in the US or the UK or even Australia.
So you can't just sort of pluck something from here and implant it here.
Absolutely not. I mean, it has to be modified and customized. I think customized is the word. Absolutely.
Right. So the other thing that I want to ask you is that I learned that you're associated with institutions like Dignity Foundation and other organizations in serving seniors. Is that right?
Yeah, I have sort of done a bit of work with Dignity in the sense that I have done some webinars, of course, and Sheelu Srinivasan ma'am has been doing quite a bit of good work as far as the Chai Masti centers and all, which is the throughout. Yeah, I have sort of through my formative years, even in in Amrita, as you know, I mean, Amma is doing a lot of good work anyway.
Correct,
so we were sort of in a way associated with that as well, wherein we used to see a lot of people who used to visit Worldly Cow, which is one of the centers where she used to be there. Then apart from that, yes, HelpAge has been a sort of an association since my days in AIIMS, purely because HelpAge is one of the organizations. HelpAge International is there. HelpAge India has really sort of been a forefront, especially in trying to help out people. I mean, even recognizing elder abuse to a great extent. They actually have an yearly report of elder abuse, which they sort of put up. It's a survey which they put up. And so that is there. And of course, there is, I mean, I'm a part of an initiative which is known as Graceful Living. So that is, there's an NGO which is known as Tulsi Trust. So through that, I mean, I was instrumental in sort of starting the first support group for older adults, which we started in Jaslo. And that we have sort of continued now in online. obviously we had to sort of adapt. And I mean, I wouldn't say I'm surprised. I mean, learning has no age. So all older adults picked up technology and they sort of came. But my only question here was, through all these NGOs, through all these things, associations, what is most important is we need to make sure that care reaches out. I think that is the way things have to be done, because older adults, not everybody can come to you. I mean, that's the way it works. So whether it's through telemedicine, whether it's through, I mean, I think technology training was something like HelpAge itself took a lot of sort of initiative on that self for digital literacy. So that helped a lot of older adults to bridge boundaries. So I think that is also something which I was also part as far as graceful living was concerned. And then, of course, I mean, one of the very important things which I sort of realized was there are a lot of unsung heroes in older adults, and they need. So through graceful living, we actually try to give platform to them. I think there's something on a successful aging. Like there is a 76-year-old who is actually did a diploma in gerontology, which is a degree, at 76. So, I mean, there is no particular, I mean, that was done through Tata Institute of TISS only. So, I mean, that's what, so I think try to highlight people who are trying to make a difference. I think that is also sort of, that's what you will have to do. And through various organizations, what help can reach out. I think that is the motto which I look at it, because you have to help the elderly. If people have similar thought processes, it obviously helps.
So one thing I hear you say is that there are a bunch of people who seem to have very high level of individual motivation, irrespective of their age. And those are very different from the rest of them. So is there anything that we can, is there something which is part of the way they grew up? What actually led to their individual motivation to remain productive in spite of aging?
Yeah, I think the prince, I mean, at first, of course, it depends upon what happened with their life, a lot of things. We see a lot of people undergoing a lot of stress and then sort of changing it completely. But we also see people who have always been at that level. So for example, there is something known as successful aging. Now, successful aging, how do you? I mean, it's very easy to say, yeah, you age successful, you age successfully, or you age gracefully. But then there are certain principles. Now, anyways, as we go ahead, we should never sort of concentrate on the fact that what we cannot do. So if you have to age successfully, you go on the motto of what you can do.
Yeah.
A glass is half full, or it's, I mean, it's half absent. So if you look at the glass half full, then that's how you have to sort of take it. So so basically use your strengths, concentrate on your strengths, optimize them, and then overcome your weakness. So that is how you age successfully. So for example, if you, I mean, people who have been in different positions, I mean, throughout the life course of any older adult, anybody who's a 90-year-old, it cannot be that they haven't sort of undergone a lot of situations, family, friends, this, but then they have sort of found out a way to overcome it. I think the word is adaptability. The more adaptable an older adult is, the more easier it is to become. And by adaptable, I don't mean by sacrificing your own sort of personality or the way you are, but adaptable to situations in which you can overcome your weakness and focus on your strengths, rather than just thinking ki, oh my God, I can't do this and do that. Because, and another thing they say is the principle of having a purpose in life. When you get up every day morning, and if you have a purpose in life, and I think that sort of, I mean, it could be anything. It could be getting a new skill. It could be helping somebody. It could be a new language, or it could be substantiating something. It could be a mentor to a younger person who's in your same sort of work. But if you have that purpose, I think that keeps you going. So I think having a purpose and driving yourself through it, along with that, making sure you have a good health in whatever way, whether it's through brain health, whether it's through physical exercise, which you might have been doing continuously. I think that's what sort of, maybe you can say, differentiates. Another thing is the disease burden. I mean, diseases are not something you always get because of you, but maximum them you, yes, for example, diabetes, hypertension, these are all things you build up. It's not something that hits you after 60. It's something that you might have had earlier. Maybe it's just detected later. And so that's how. So basically trying to optimize your health, but at the same time giving back and keeping yourself, I think, active. I think that would be the one which will take you to sort of successful aging. Because I've seen a lot of people are very busy, but suddenly after retirement, they don't do anything, and then it becomes an absolute hole.
What you're saying is very interesting. You use some very interesting words. Flexibility you talked about. You also said something about adaptability. And the other thing is about one of the other terms that I've learned or I heard from some of the older people I've been meeting is about willing to learn. If these three things happen, the chances of their being productive with their age, would that be much higher?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of intergenerational bonding also helps. I don't think anybody and everybody should only, I mean, what is the restriction? Why should an 80-year-old only be friends with a 80-year-old? An 80-year-old can be friends with a 20-year-old, a 25-year-old. The gap can be bridged. For example, there is experience on one side and there is maybe technology, new things. So that freshness and experience can obviously go together. And ultimately, I mean, the result has always been sort of great. For example, mentorship, as I said, it could be somebody in law mentoring somebody who's younger in law. So ultimately that experience with that. So that common sort of interest should still attract people to have, I mean, to be in friendships and acquaintances, rather than just thinking that I should only be friends with it. I mean, I'm 80, I will not get friends, because a lot of people just think that way now. How will I get new friends now? I don't think that is sort of a case. And learning, I think, is very important. Willingness to learn. More than that, I think it's our responsibility of all age groups to teach also. Now, a lot of times there is, I mean, I was quoting this example the other day. It's easy for me to sort of order from Zomato for an older adult,
right,
rather than teaching them the app. But I would want them to learn the app so that they can do it independently. Because that's just, I mean, I won't say I'm not blaming the younger person here, but it's just saving time. Okay, what do you want? We'll order. So if you teach that, it is actually adding to that particular knowledge to that older adult, and that's a learning for it.
You're actually building a capability, a new capability.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Yeah. So tell me, this is a very important issue. One of the things that's happening to our country, our economy is dependent on the basis of the policies and the execution from the government side, but it's also largely driven by private industry. So are there industrial houses, pharma companies, etc., which are doing some phenomenal work in this area?
I think the paradigm of elder care has really changed over the pandemic, actually.
Okay.
Because people actually thought, I mean, people, whatever said and done, work from home and a lot of things when they were not going, maybe they thought of new ideas. Yeah. So then a lot of private interests also, for example, a lot of startups have sort of dwelled into elder care space. Yeah. Because people realized that there was a lot of isolation. People were not sort of getting into connected to each other. So they needed telemedicine, they needed telehealth, they needed counseling. They just needed to be in a companionship. I wouldn't say even medical part. So that drove a lot of private sort of firms and industries also. So yes, in India, I mean, it is sort of changed a lot. And more sort of private enterprises, along with only, for example, the government, if you say only the leading government institutions like AIIMS and all the others should be interested. No, yes, they will be a part of policy making because AIIMS has always been policy makers. Okay. But that does not necessarily mean that other private institutions are. For example, when I did my MD, the number of geriatricians in India were very less. But now it is only increasing. Right. So that's the change. In India, the first geriatric course was started in 1996 in Chennai in Madras Medical College. Oh, so that was
as late as 1996 only.
Yeah. So we are that new. It's like a 26 years only this particular specialty as far as training is concerned. It's been happening for years abroad. Yeah. So what I am trying to say here is, so now the private industry also to a great extent is sort of warming up. But the focus is on quality of care. Yeah. Because costing, it's not, one should understand that whether it's older adults, younger adults, anybody, people are ready to pay. Paying is not always the problem. Right. It's about the quality which is given. That's because ultimately the need has to be seen. If it's a bedridden patient, the need only increases, the costing increases. And it's two ways. For example, the client or the older adult also, or the caregiver has to understand that yes, this particular care which has been given is quality. So it will be sort of slightly more maybe on the expensive side as compared to maybe a different setup. And every setups actually are sort of coming up, whether it's the private industry, whether it's government, whether it's semi-private. I think as we go ahead, it will really help if it's a public-private sort of a partnership, because we will be able to reach out more people as compared to maybe only private or public, which is usually the norm.
So tell me, what is your advice to seniors? I'm asking you, for instance, what are the 3 most important things that seniors must pay attention to lead a hassle-free productive life? Just 3 things. Don't give me a big list. Just 3 things on a day-to-day basis. What should I be doing regularly to stay fit, to stay alert, and to contribute? Otherwise, most elders are seen as sitting in a corner griping most of the time. I'm just saying, how do we shift it?
So I think the 3 most important things would be, one is, of course, I think take care of your health.
Okay.
Health is most important. And it includes everything. It includes the physical health, mental health, social well-being as well, because your social strata, in the sense your social connect, who you're connected with, your friends, family, everything matters. You can't just say your health is just your medical, the number of diseases that you have. So optimize it. And as I've told, always concentrate on what medications you're having, have a keen interest on your own health. Do not be completely dependent on others to give you the tablets. If you're still able to do it yourself, you should know your health, because it's your body. I think so. That is very, very important, because health is where everything sort of starts. I'm not saying it because I'm a medical professional, but because purely, if you are not healthy, then whatever you're pushing yourself to, you will break down at sort of some point of time. Then secondly, always give yourself some time to exercise. I think physical exercise is very, very important. The common misnomer for us always is, I am eating well, I'm not eating I'm not eating sort of a lot of things, still I am not losing weight, or I am still sort of feeling tired. But the point is, because you're not having any physical exercise, because physical exercise takes care of most diseases. One, and secondly, it also keeps you very mobile. You can't, of course, think of a physical exercise after you're a bit immobile. It becomes more difficult as you get more and more immobile. So try to maybe even give yourself short-term goals. For example, somebody starts physical exercise and they're like, chalo, today I'm going to go. So first day itself 20 minutes, 1 hour, and that's a breakdown. That shouldn't be done. Give your body time. It's like how we always do warm-ups before doing something. Whether it's an interview, or whether it's a normal thing, we give ourselves. So give yourself that warm-up and then go into the intensity of sort of exercise. Then I think the third very important thing, which has sort of, I think, come up in a huge way, even in the pandemic, before the pandemic, it was always sort of important, is the fact that I think one should take care of your brain health, to try to always learn. I think learning is very important, purely because if you don't continue to learn and then you don't have that purpose, then sometimes you feel, then what am I doing? Do I actually contribute in any way or not? And at no way, let me tell you, one of the biggest resources that even India has to an extent, which is untapped, is the older adults. They are a rich resource, according to me. Experience.
That's an amazing thing that you're saying, and very heartening for people like us.
No, absolutely. And I'm still talking to people who are still active. There are a lot of people who are wanting to be active, but basically not getting that purpose.
Right.
So I think this is where I'm coming from, where you should, and like, for example, there's a 100-year-old who has multiple diseases. A 80-year-old who is fit can take care of that 100-year-old and try to contribute. So we shouldn't keep thinking that it's going to be a younger adult, or it's going to be somebody, a caregiver or something. So, but that will only happen if we empower the older adults, because the general notion is always, no, somebody older has to
sit in the corner types.
Or somebody older will have to take it. And I'm not saying that for example, Sudoku. It's not a blanket thing. Like, for example, you might like Sudoku, but the other person might not. So try to figure out what stimulates your brain, because doing Sudoku and making it an effort, oh my God, today again I have to do Sudoku because Dr. Prem is saying, is not going to help your brain. So I think, see what you can do, And I think you said top three, but I'll just add one more. I think a sense of gratitude also helps. We tend to always focus on what we don't have, which I always sort of. So reminisce. There is a huge number of memories that an older adult has.
Yeah.
Positive, negative, but try to reminisce the positive parts. Remember how you overcame the negative, and sometimes letting it out helps. Tell it to somebody or write it down in a diary if there is nobody. Sometimes there is nobody purely because not because nobody wants to be, it's just not happening. For example, in the pandemic, everybody was here and there. So then people had to empower themselves with a little push by us. So try to do that. Let us focus on what we have and how. I mean, then you realize it's not been as bad as we sort of think that, oh my God, all of these things are happening and why these things are happening.
Yeah. Tell me, is there a difference between the elderly women and the elderly men? The general impression I have is that, I could be wrong, the elderly women seem to cope and do much better than elderly men, especially when one of them is off, right? Elderly women who actually survived, they do better than if she had passed away and the elderly man stayed. Now, is there something peculiar to this country, or is it generally a similar thing?
I think in general, all age groups, to be very frank, women are comparatively more stronger. Elderly women even more so than men, purely because even if you see health, for example, if I have to give the example of falls, it has been seen that the chance of bone health being bad because of osteoporosis, because we know the hormones sort of take a shift as far as females are concerned, the chances of breakage of bones is more. But if the bones of an older male breaks and he has a hip fracture, the chances of death are more. So basically survival is, so for example, if something happens to them also, they overcome. Whereas for males, it is not necessarily that they will always overcome it. They might actually sort of have a difficult sort of path. And I think purely, if you have to see in, I won't say philosophical, medical way also, I think they undergo a lot. The body changes a lot. So they in general overcome much more as compared to an older male as well throughout a life course, that they are in general able to take maybe, I mean, I'm not even physically, I would say physically we are always told and thought that men are supposed to be more.
What I hear you saying, the older men tend to give up, is it? Faster?
No, I won't say they give up per se as people, but it has been seen that in research, clearly medically, what happens is the body tends to give up more easily as compared to maybe even sort of. And there have been a lot of cases, as I said. For example, if there is a female who has lost her husband, the coping mechanism has been seen better, maybe as compared to maybe a male who's lost his wife, purely because maybe that sort of relationship in which maybe there might be a bit of dependency on the female. Well, I don't know whether that was there, but it's I mean, it's individual, but ultimately they are partners. So whenever they lose each other, both are going to be affected quite badly. Maybe females are much stronger, that they might sort of still weather it, as compared to males, which I have seen a lot of people just, I mean, absolutely, I mean, a lot of patients just not able to cope up at all.
So one thing that is an observation is that women find it easier to be able to be useful within the household in as many different ways. Like, they can do something in the kitchen, they can do something with the grandchildren, all sorts of things. They find ways to be useful, they find ways to be productive. Whereas the men can't handle many of this. And then they get cut off in some fashion. Is that a fair observation?
Not necessarily. I think we are in a day and age where everybody does everything sort of, to be very frank, equally also. I mean, and everybody enjoys it also. I mean, it's not, to be very frank, as far as grandchildren is concerned, I don't think I don't have to say that to anybody here. Yeah. You obviously do enjoy their company and you want to be more with them, and they want to be, as they grow more, they realize that they also want to be, because that experience is completely different. I mean, on a lighter note, it's a full license. You can do anything wrong and nobody can question you. So I think as far as men is concerned, I would just say both. I think it's more of goals, I would say.
Okay.
It's not a generalization that is what should happen.
Right.
For example, if a person, for example, a female who's been a CEO of a company for ages together, and then it's not necessarily just because she's a female that she's just going to sort of switch over and do all that. Maybe she has been balancing that throughout. But at the same time, I think individual goals matter a lot. A lot of older adults, both sexes, make a lot of plans, but somehow they are not able to materialize because that planning is not fully in sort of, you can say, maybe in a sort of a full form. For example, yes, I'll travel a lot after I retire. I will do a lot of things. But then when you're not planned, what happens is that maybe one illness and then everything sort of goes for a six. So I think I would say pre-retirement is where the planning should start. Maybe 1 or 2 years before, wherein you are like, I want to do this at this time. For example, after working 6 months, I'm going to just go into a hiatus. I don't say anybody, and it's right on both sides. If you don't want to work after, fine, fair enough. You have decided you don't want to work. Just because A and B or somebody is saying, you have worked all your life, continue to work, you shouldn't work. Yeah. You should work because you want to work and you want to give back because you want to give back, not because 10 people are saying, what will you do now? Because then that sense of negativity should not come that, oh my God, now it's the last day of retirement and I don't know what I'm going to do after that.
So is there a scope for coaching retired people or about to retire people? Like, for instance, let's say I'm in an organization and I'm going to be retiring another 2 years' time, right? So would it be great if somebody was to have a conversation with me saying, okay, tell me after retirement, men are supposed to retire at 58 these days, right?
Yeah.
And at 58, the mind and the body is still pretty active. And most of the time it is active till 80.
Yeah.
So is there a role that somebody can play as a retirement coach for these people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, I would say more of, I think we always tend to, there are sort of workshops which are held, which I have also been a part of, wherein we obviously talk about the health part and somebody talks about the finance part, because that is the one which is sort of concentrated a lot.
Yeah.
But nobody talks about what to do.
Correct. That's why I've asked that. Yeah.
Or gives a peep that this is what can be done. I mean, as far as I know, knowing you and knowing, of course, Beta as well, because that as a coach, we obviously contribute to the fact. Even as a doctor, for example, I can tell you that these are your diseases. These are the medications you have to take. But ultimately, you have to take it. You have to show that discipline to sort of take it. Correct. So I think, but in a developmental state, it is much easier. For example, if somebody talks to them at 70, 12 years down the line when they're always sort of, it's never late, but then it becomes more difficult and you have to maybe sort of come back to the goals. I think, no, it's definitely, I think more and more corporates should sort of think about that. Everybody does these retirement workshops, but I hope it's not only for the sake of doing for it, rather than actually having a long-term plan. And the day every sort of company realizes that, this particular healthcare, this particular population is a very prudent and productive population who can continue to contribute. I think that is when this sustained sort of effort will be there, where you never know. We might have a specific workshop wherein we say that, no, now it's an 80 years workshop. So where we have to meet everybody above 80 and let's plan about what you're going to do in the next 10 years. There was a time we could not talk about 40, but now we are talking about 80 and 100. So obviously health has only improved.
How does India compare with the rest of the nations, the rest of the countries in terms of elder care? Or what are the top 5 senior issues in India?
I think as far as, we are getting there. As I said that, we got into the absolute training phase only in 96. A lot of older people have, a lot of doctors before also have taken care, but maybe not necessarily in the way that a geriatrician does, purely because it's a specialty which came later. So I think the most common problems one can see, of course, I think dementia is very, very sort of, it is stocked in, it is something which can be really, really disturbing, purely because if somebody thinks that, oh my God, I cannot remember anything. When you have it even for a second, you get really frustrated. So imagine not having it at all. I think that's very common. Then one of the issues which is very commonly neglected, I think, is hearing. I think hearing is also something which is very, very important. It's a correctable to a lot of extent. To a lot of people, it can be correctable to an extent, but whatever extent it is, it should be done. And I think visual disturbances, because these affect quality of life. If you can't hear, if you can't see, then whatever, how much ever I keep saying you should learn, how do you do that? So then I think nutrition is very important, and with that comes teeth. I mean, I can give you the best diet possible. I can say you take the balanced diet, but you don't have teeth or you are not comfortable with your dentures.
Right.
So that can obviously be. Then I think all the metabolic diseases are very, very common. I mean, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, stroke. I mean, depression is getting there because more and more people are diagnosing depression now rather than just branding it. No, this is something which is happening because you're getting old. And maybe that's about. I think this ageist attitude, which a lot of people have, is something which should stop, because not everything should be put on the aging, because age is just a number. It's about how you look at yourself. And I don't think it should be, it should be not a fascination of anti-aging or maybe getting young. It should be a fascination of aging gracefully.
Right. Aging gracefully is the magic.
Yeah.
So when should a person start? I mean, for instance, most people retire at 58 to 60. So should I start thinking about all of this when I am 50, when I'm 55? What are some of the people, you might have met some people who have done or managed this very well. What have you found? When did they start? What they do?
Yeah, I think the concentration should be in the 50s, purely because you are in a case where you have started thinking about that. I mean, these days, of course, there's a very fine line. It's never a retirement. It's only maybe switching over.
Correct.
You plan for maybe something you want to do, but you're building it up.
Right.
Because if you're planning to do something on your own, it takes time. Or if you're planning to do something with somebody else, you're obviously in constant conversations, but you can only sort of commit later. So you prepare it. So as far as the overall perspective is concerned, where you want to take an overall of your health, your physical part, maybe your work part, your home part, then plan to sort of enjoy. I think you should sort of do it in the 50s, purely because you will be able to, it's not hitting you, because after 55 is also fine according to me. 50s would be better. 60 is just too close. I mean, 1 or 2 years just around the retirement. Then it doesn't keep you a plan. It just keeps you maybe 1, 2, 3. And if 1 and 2 fail and 3 becomes dicey, then you become a bit sort of, I mean, should I have done this earlier, and should I have not? So I think 50s is a good, but as far as health is concerned, I think everybody should start much, much earlier, because it's not something that nothing dawns. I mean, it's not that suddenly somebody gets a stroke. There has been a risk factor which must have built up. That is why these things have sort of happened. Diabetes, for example. And I mean, the only problem these days is what is also happening is you need to know where you have to stop, because youngsters are also dying. I mean, there have been people who have been pumping iron in the gym, having the best cardiologists, having the best diet, but they have suddenly died. So I think the thing about stress, I think that is something we keep undermining. People in stress is one thing. People expressing stress and seeking help is completely another thing. So
in fact, that's very interesting that you should say it. I know people who are under stress, but they don't know they are in stress. Is that possible?
Yeah, it's because sometimes they just put it into, I mean, things like, oh, it's just the nature of the job, or it's just that I have to. So it just seems continuous. And I think maybe if you have observed it, it is only increased in the pandemic because work from home has blurred lines. There is no office time. There is no lunch time.
Correct.
There is no home time. There is no, if you're in an office,
no privacy.
Yeah, if you're in a half an hour, for example, you actually sit across and chat something completely not related maybe to the work, and then come back and sort of go back to work. Then the process of going back home, that was also a process.
Yeah.
And then go back, maybe have your tea, relax, and then that the day ends. But now what is happening is it's like, no, we can have a meeting at 6, we can have a meeting at 7, we can have a meeting at 8. Yeah. I mean, why? Because why? You must have got up late only, no? I mean, or whatever, or you're at home only. So it's just that generalizations. And it has really, I mean, affected both the young and the old as well.
Correct.
Because the older adults thought, I mean, I don't blame either of them. They thought now they are home, they'll spend more time. But it didn't happen. Purely because the companies and whatever, they made sure that all that particular time was there. Obviously, because it got diluted, so meetings didn't have an upper limit.
Correct.
So I think
Zoom has become the drawing room.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what I am hoping, what will happen is ultimately it will be a positive in that we will have a hybrid model. For example, if I do a public meeting somewhere, now I know that somebody in Delhi can also watch me.
Yeah. So
Or,
that's the benefit.
yeah,
That's
I think that's a big benefit. So for example, if you can come to my OPD and see me, I'm okay. But now I can see that bedridden patient at home also, because I can see them through video. And I know that they're doing well or not. So there are obviously, I mean, advantages and disadvantages, but I feel the biggest silver lining of this particular time has been that elders have sort of taken up to technology, which something
Today, for instance, we have 2 people who are not in Bombay, but they're attending this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there any question that you think I should have asked, but I'm not asked?
No, I think overall, obviously, you have sort of covered most things. I would say, I mean, I have sort of told what the motto of geriatrics is. It's about overall quality of life and making sure that the holistic care is sort of taken. I would just want to dwell maybe a bit about the fact of prevention, I think, is very important.
Right.
I think you need to have a good sleep. The quality and quantity are two different things. You can be on the bed for 10 hours and not get good sleep, but you can be in the bed for 4 to 5 hours. And if it works for you, then I think that is good. So sleep is very important, and it's good for memory as well, because most of your building blocks of the brain actually happen, consolidation happens actually in the sleep. I mean, if you remember when we were kids, I mean, one day before the exam, we were always told that you should sleep early. It was not because we are going to be fresh. It's because whatever we have read, that is going to sort of encapsulate and become more firm in our brains. Then another aspect of prevention, I think, is also immunization. And I'm not saying it because of COVID. Pneumonia vaccines were there before as well. Influenza vaccines were also there. People only used to take vaccines when they used to travel to certain countries because they had to travel, and not necessarily because they believed in the fact that they can be protective. But studies clearly say, again, I would reiterate that it's not that you won't get pneumonia, but the fact that if you take the vaccines, then it obviously helps you in having a better chance in fighting the disease as compared to else. Then I think prevention is better than cure has been used so many times. But being prevention is not only thinking about the fact that I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this. Prevention is a overall plan in which you basically make sure that your diet is good, but at the same time you do physical exercise. At the same time, you keep your levels of stress less. Give yourself a me time, and that me time can be only you. I mean, it could be anything. It could be meditation. It could be you just closing your eyes for half an hour, not thinking about anything. It could be you singing a song, or it could be you writing down something. But you should always have your sort of me time. Very important thing in older adults, I think, is the caregivers. We tend to forget them a lot because that caregiver might be another older adult. Yes. Or maybe even a younger person. Right. Age is no bar in that also, because nobody selects their caregivers. You obviously have them and they take very good care of anybody who is in a problem. But we need to take care of the caregiver so that there is a better care for the older adult. That is something we have to understand, because there can be a lot of caregiver stress, especially a person who's got dementia, of an older adult, and somebody who has to take care.
So and the caregiver could also be a senior citizen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in most cases, it is. It's not necessarily that. It could be. It could be that way. And these days, even more. It's also a father son or a father daughter or a son. I mean, mother, because it's 90-year-old being taken care by a 60-year-old. Correct. People are living. People are living long. So I think more than anything, as a caregiver, this is to the caregivers, take care of yourselves as well. Purely because your health will monitor the fact how you will be able to take care of others better. Seek help. I think that is important. If you're not able to do it, there are professional people there who will sort of take your burden. Your burden should reduce, then only you will be able to take better care. Then another very, very important thing which I would want to highlight is, ultimately everybody sort of always says that what does a geriatrician sort of do actually? Now, a geriatrician is basically somebody who's trained in treating older adults only. So, and we usually create something known as a problem list, in which every problem is important and every problem is addressed. For example, if somebody has a pneumonia, yes, I am going to treat the pneumonia acutely because that's the main problem. But that doesn't mean if somebody has a history of falls, has a fear of fall, has an imbalance, has a dementia, I would not take care of all that. So it's basically kind of a one-stop place wherein everything should be taken care of. Sometimes it can need help of other specialties, yes, For example, for dentists might be needed, obviously, ophthalmologists might be needed. But the key word in elder care, I think, is quality of life. The more independent you are, the more sort of happy you are, the more longer you live, the more independent you can be only if you are more healthy. So I think health is something which is sort of a common aspect, a common chain which sort of links both independence and dependence. So I think that is something which one should really sort of take. And also, I think taking an initiative has no age. So if somebody wants to take an initiative in anything, they should. Purely because it's not maybe that's why I think more and more platforms for older adults should come up, and there are plenty now. I mean before there weren't many. It could be for depicting your skills in singing, or it could be for depicting your skills in business, or it could be just for the fact that you want to spend that time that we usually do through those support groups. Always try to learn new skills if you have the time. Sometimes you don't. I mean, you might be working so hard even after a role that you might not have time to even learn new things. But giving a challenge to your brain always helps. Brain gets bored very, very easily. So if you do the routine things daily, it will not accept it as a challenge. It is said that even by using the brush from a different hand, by brushing from a different hand, actually
left
the challenge,
hand, right to the left hand.
It gives sort of a neuroplasticity or creates new circuits. Another thing is always know enough about your health, but not depend upon Google for everything.
Not Dr. Google.
Yeah, why I'm saying this is because it just creates too much of stress.
Right.
I mean, you should know what to know. Ultimately, yes, Google doesn't put a filter that, you are not a doctor, we will not show you more. But try to make sure that you clear your doubts when you go to the doctor, rather than thinking that, oh my God, I have some swelling, definitely it's going to be a cancer. No, we should not go into those extremities. We have to make sure we ask our doubts. And I think from an elder care perspective, the most important thing that an older adult needs is time.
Right.
Because when we get to know health issues, sometimes it could be challenging, maybe because they are not able to hear, or maybe they are not able to see, or maybe they are not able to understand. I think communication is a key. And I think both sides, sometimes in general, an older adult might have to take 2 steps forward, and then the younger person also might have to take 2 steps forward and to meet in between. I think that's the way everybody should sort of go ahead. I think elder care is something which is really sort of potentially one of very, very, very sort of, I can say, very potentially big things which might happen. But the center of all this will always be older adults. So they as resources, and they as, you can say, they as inspiration would always keep to inspiring maybe even me to actually sort of continue to provide better care.
Do you think you have a few minutes to take any questions from
sure.
others? Just how much more time can you give us? Another 5-10 minutes?
Sure.
Yeah. Any other questions? Paramu, Chandra, Ganpati?
I have only one thing. You spoke about demantics.
I can't hear you. Can you speak a little louder?
About dementia, etc. What about Parkinson's? Where does this come in the whole scheme of things?
Yeah, Parkinson's is also basically a very much a degenerative neurological disorder only. And it can be quite debilitating. And a lot of people with Parkinson's actually have tremors. They are not able to walk. They have an imbalance. They have difficulty to even turn. So it is very much in the spectrum of diseases. Yes, it's a disease which can really sort of make an older adult dependent. And unfortunately, certain people can also have dementia with Parkinson's. So then that becomes even more sort of difficult to handle. So till we are in this, allaying of symptoms is very important. The more we are able to sort of control the symptoms to a longer time, the better. It becomes difficult to handle as we go older.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Paramu, Chandra?
I think mostly I think Prem has covered all things. We don't have any special things to ask.
Prem, is it all right for me to share the recording on LinkedIn and
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Because I think it's so informative, and many of the things that you talked about with this kind of intensity and clarity is not necessarily available when you go to website, right? And as you rightly said, anytime you go and check a website, it immediately says, I think something more serious is happening. Like, for instance, I have this, currently the body temperature seems to be warmer than usual. And you go to WebMed and it says some major problem for you kind of stuff. People tend to panic in this age group. Yeah.
So, and I don't blame anybody to be referring any age group. For example, what the net will give you is 10 differential diagnoses, and they're like,
so it's very confusing. Whereas I think what you really need at this point in time in our lives is somebody who's knowledgeable, who's reassuring, who's caring, and who's empathetic. I think there's empathy.
I think the key word is empathy and not sympathy.
Yeah, exactly. But absolutely, I'm so delighted that you took the time for us. And I'm going to, as I said, share the recording with a lot more people. I'm truly grateful for your time. And absolutely, I have two mixed feelings. On one side, I'm saying truly grateful to you as a professional, right? On the other side, I'm saying I'm so proud of you that you're my close friend's son and you're doing such fantastic work. So on both kids, I think we must give you a big round of applause, right? Thank you so much again. And if there is anything at all we can do to help you in your cause, as long as we are able and we are willing, we'll be able to do that. I'm absolutely delighted to do that if you think there is anything we can do.
Absolutely.
Right? Thank you so much, Prem. Thanks, Parvo. Thanks, Chandra.
Thanks, Prem.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later, Sridhar.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Okay,
Bye, Chandra.
okay, bye.